The millionaire freezes up upon hearing a black man shout, "Don't get in the car." And this. The city hummed like a restless beast, a cacophony of sirens, laughter, and the rhythmic tap of heels on pavement. Marina pushed through the throngs, her heart pounding like a drum at a concert. Today was different. Today she was in the hospital, her mind swirling with uncertainty. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a stark, cold glow that matched her unease. She pulled her coat tighter around her as a chill grazed her skin. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and the stories of patients hiding behind closed doors. And there was Peter, her brave little fighter. He had an uncanny knack for finding trouble, or perhaps it was trouble that found him. But today it was different. Today he'd taken it upon himself to reach out to someone she never thought she'd see again, Edward. Just as she was losing hope, out of the blue, a familiar face flashed across her mind. "Don't get in the car." The voice was urgent, almost primal, cutting through the hospital's sterile calm. Marina froze, her breath hitching in her throat. Surrounded by a crowd, people stopped, eyebrows lifted in confusion, eyes darting toward the noise. Panic flickered in the eyes of strangers, faces transformed from concern to terror, and Marina felt a lump rise in her throat. Was it a carjacking, a kidnapping, an omen of something worse? At that moment, she caught sight of Edward, stepping out of the shadows as if summoned by fate. His presence sent a wave of mixed emotions crashing over her, static electricity and a familiar warmth. But how could she trust him? Memories of their past, tangled with hope and regret, flooded her thoughts. In front of her, Edward's face reflected concern, but it was still so impossibly distant. What had he done to deserve another chance? And what did Peter think? Peter stood beside Edward, eyes wide with shock, stuck between two turbulent worlds. The boy's innocent heart held secrets he didn't know he was part of, secrets that tied them together in ways Marina was terrified to explore. The weight of those secrets crushed her chest, and she felt the urge to protect Peter from the storm that was brewing in the air. Just then, Leo, her troubled brother, pushed through the crowd. His face was pale, and anger lined his features. He had this way of causing chaos wherever he went. "Marina," he called, and the world around her blurred. His voice was a thunderclap that shifted everything. Tension crackled. What did he want this time? Marina's heart raced. The air felt electric. The echoes of that warning still hung in the air. "Don't get in the car." It morphed into confusion as all eyes turned towards her, judgmental and curious. Could she risk it all? Could she trust Edward again? Or would her brother's shadow swallow everything whole? Just as the air thickened with uncertainty, she began to step toward Edward when a siren blared nearby, shattering the fragile moment. Things hung in limbo, a precarious balance of possibility and pain. And that shout echoed in her mind, reverberating with a sense of impending doom. What lay ahead? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without prior notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you are still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The siren pierced through the air, slicing the tension like a knife. Marina's heart raced as she fought against the chaos closing in. Edward's eyes locked onto hers, a silent plea hidden behind layers of doubt. Peter stood frozen, caught in an invisible web woven by the urgent screams and angry accusations. Then, everything shifted. A shadow loomed behind them, an imposing figure dressed in all black. As he stepped forward, the crowd's murmurs turned into gasps of horror. The man wasn't just a stranger. He looked terrifyingly familiar, like a reflection of something Marina had buried deep within her memory. "Leonard?" Leo's voice cut through the crowd, thick with disbelief. She turned to see her brother's face, pale as he took a step back. The name echoed, sending shockwaves through the air. Leonard was the brother they had all believed was gone, a victim swallowed by the darkness that haunted their family. "No way! It can't be!" Marina could hardly believe it. Her eyes darted between Leo and Leonard, each expression a storm of emotions. This wasn't just a reunion. It was explosive. Everything they thought they knew began to unravel. Who had kept this secret? Why didn't anyone say anything? Suddenly, the atmosphere thickened. "You shouldn't have come back," Leo spat, anger flaring like a fire in the dead of winter. "You left us." Every word dripped with years of pain and regret. Leonard smirked, the look chilling Marina to her core. "I didn't leave, I was taken." His eyes darted to Edward and the tension crackled. "And some of us held on to truths too dangerous to share." "Stop it," Marina shouted, feeling the weight of their family's traumas pressing against her chest. All around, whispers erupted from the crowd, people backing away. They watched the family drama unfold, a spectacle of betrayal, revelation, and long-buried secrets. But the moment transformed again. The sirens blared louder, more officers swarmed the area. "What's going on here?" an authority figure shouted as he stepped into the chaos. The sight of badges set everyone on edge, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. "Stay back!" Leonard raised a hand, panic mingling with something darker in his gaze. "I'm not done." He turned back to Marina, suddenly desperate. "You need to listen to me. They're coming for you next." Marina felt her heart drop. Who were they? The shadows of secrets clawing at her mind spoke of dangers she couldn't grasp. Edward moved closer, protective and tense. "We can't trust him," he murmured. But the divisions in the group were fracturing further. "Trust? You think we can trust you?" Leonard roared, drawing everyone's attention back to the heart of the chaos. The word hung heavily in the air, settling like a dark cloud. Could they trust anyone? With the past sinking its claws deeper into their lives, the reality twisted into something unfathomable. Marina's gut churned. Nothing made sense anymore. What should have been a moment of reunion fell apart, and before she could gather her thoughts, a chilling truth hung like a noose. "Your son is in danger, Marina." And everything snapped. The air went thin, silence enveloping them all. Every eye shifted to Peter. Instinctively, she reached for him, but the world around her blurred. What did it mean? She was overwhelmed, a tidal wave of fear and uncertainty crashing over her. As sirens blared and the tension crackled with unspoken trespasses, nothing was certain anymore. What danger lurked in the shadows? What secrets threatened to pull them all under? With every heartbeat, the clock began to tick louder. The words hung in the air, heavy with fear. "Your son is in danger, Marina." It felt like the earth beneath her shook. She grabbed Peter's arm, pulling him close. The crowd felt like a living, breathing thing, teetering on the edge of panic. What danger? Who was this man, and what had he dragged back with him? "What do you mean?" Marina's voice was barely a whisper, but it felt like a scream under the weight of her heart. Leonard stepped forward, eyes wild. "Everything you think you know isn't true. They're coming." The chaos around them faded. She could only focus on those words. They? Who are they? Then the sirens didn't just wail. They howled, piercing through the silence like a knife. The officers moved closer, badges glinting, eyes scanning the faces in the crowd. The crowd was restless, whispering among themselves, their murmurs morphing into a swell of confusion. "Everyone, step back," an officer shouted, firm but cautious, as if sensing the dark energy snapping at the edges. Before Marina could reply, Leonard surged forward, uncontrolled, frantic. "You think you're safe? They're here!" And just like that, the moment unraveled again, thick with dread. Edward pulled Marina and Peter back, protective instinct roaring alive. "Get Peter away from him!" His voice was harsh, but desperation laced it, shaking with urgency. The tension crackled. She didn't want to choose sides. Not now. Not when everything felt like it was teetering on the edge. Suddenly, the ground shook underfoot and the world tilted sideways. In the distance, a loud explosion erupted, shattering the air. A fireball erupted, sending debris flying. Screams rang out. People stumbled, confusion rippling through the crowd. Panic bloomed. They turned sharply, eyes wide with horror, scattering like leaves in a storm. "Run!" an officer yelled, and the crowd surged backward, propelled by fear. "Marina!" Leo shouted as he attempted to weave through the crowd, but shadows swallowed him up, lost in the chaos. The crowd surged, limbs flailing. "Edward!" Marina's voice sliced through the cacophony, her heart racing as she turned to see where he was. But Edward was gone, lost in the surge of bodies. Peter's grip around her hand tightened, his face pale, fear swelling in his wide eyes. "Where's he gone?" Panic clawed at her throat. She turned, desperately seeking him, when Leonard stepped closer, his presence looming like a dark cloud. "I told you to listen. He can't save you." The roar of chaos drowned her reason. It boiled beneath the surface, and all she could hear was the pounding of her heart. What was happening? What did he mean? The crowd thinned, people darting away, leaving her exposed, like prey in the middle of a storm. "No," she gritted, fear morphing into fury. "You're lying." But just as those words left her lips, Leonard drew back. Pain shadowed his features before he whispered, "You don't know the truth. You need to find out before it's too late." And then, in a sudden flash, a figure burst through the smoke. Edward. Her heart leapt, but the urgency faded when she caught sight of a glint in his hand, a knife. The world froze in that moment. Everything hung in the balance. What was happening? Who was he really? The knife was aimed not just at Leonard, but hinted at something deeper. Something sinister sprawled beneath their tangled lives. "Edward, no!" she screamed, but it was drowned out by the explosive truth unraveling in front of her. Tension snapped like a wire. Everything shifted and tilted. Relationships fractured. Secrets lay bare. Marina felt her world split apart. What had they all been hiding? Marina. Edward's eyes, wild with something she couldn't place, held hers with a haunting intensity. And there it was, the dark shadow of a truth that loomed large and menacing. As smoke filled the air, her gaze darted helplessly between her son and the simmering tension. "Mom!" Peter screamed, jerking her back as chaos engulfed them. With the sirens fading into the distance, she knew it wasn't over. This was just the beginning, a taste of something deeper, darker, and utterly shocking. What lay beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered? Who could she trust now? As the night swallowed them whole, uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud ready to break. Marina's breath caught in her throat. Edward's wild eyes met hers, filled with desperation, as he gripped the knife like it was his last lifeline. "Get away from him!" she screamed, instinctively positioning herself between the two, even as chaos erupted around them. But just as she stepped forward, there came a deafening roar, not just from the sirens, but from the depths of the crowd itself. "Watch out!" someone yelled, and before she could react, an explosion of chaos erupted. People screamed, bodies surged, and in the pandemonium, danger converged. Marina felt her connection with Peter snap as she turned. Panic filled the air like smoke. She spotted him near a cluster of people, hands outstretched. "Peter!" she shouted, but her words dissolved into the chaos. The knife in Edward's hand gleamed ominously, and out of the corner of her eye she caught a glimpse of Leonard slipping back into the shadows. All she could hear was her own heartbeat, thudding loud and fast. It drowned out everything else. "Mom!" Peter cried, his voice rising over the chaos, pure, unfiltered fear coiling around her heart. She lunged toward him, but the crowd was a tidal wave, pulling her apart. Then, everything changed. A brilliant flash lit up the night, and the ground shook beneath her. A blinding blast knocked her off her feet, sending her sprawling. She landed hard, the world spinning. For a heartbeat, it was silent. And then came the sound, like thunder cracking the air. When she blinked her eyes open, the dust began to settle, and the reality came crashing in. Bodies lay strewn on the ground, some moving, some not. Edward, covered in debris, lay just a few feet away, his face twisted in shock. But the worst sight, the one that shattered her heart, was her brother Leo, lying motionless amidst the chaos, a crimson stain spreading across his shirt. "Leo, no!" That word ripped from her throat, raw and unrelenting. She scrambled to her feet, pain exploding in her side, but the agony pulled her forward. Just then, time froze as a figure emerged from the smoke, tall, stoic, eyes intent, completely calm amidst the chaos. It was a man in a dark suit, just like Leonard's, but more menacing. "You shouldn't have come here, Marina," he said, his voice smooth yet chilling. "Now you've endangered everyone." The crowd fell silent, disbelief washing over their faces. Who are you?" Marina stammered, feeling ice seep into her veins. Was this a man from her past? One of Leonard's secrets made flesh? He smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach those unforgiving eyes. "I'm someone that knows everything, and you've awakened something terrible." Then came the revelation, a flash of truth. "They've been watching you. Your family was a mistake that needed cleaning up." Peter trembled beside her, whispering her name, eyes wide, confusion etched across his small face. "Mom, what's happening?" Leonard stumbled forward, face pale as he locked eyes with the suited man. "You," he shouted, rage mixing with fear. "You said they were done." A low laugh escaped the suited man. "Did you really think I'd let you go? The truth, Leonard, is a cancer, and you let it spread." "Not Peter," Leonard echoed, desperate now, grabbing Marina's hand. But the world around them blurred into insignificance as horror settled deep within her bones. Was he saying her son was part of this? Everything around them morphed into chaos. Torn between dread and clinging to her boy, Marina felt the foundations of her world crumble. "No, you'll never touch him." The suited man stepped forward as if to claim Peter, but just then the knife clattered to the floor. Edward's eyes welled with something almost like understanding, and he whispered, "It's not what you think." Marina's heart raced, pounding against all reason. In that moment, she knew she had to make a choice, fight or flee. But what was truth anymore? As chaos raged around them, this wasn't just about survival. It was about unearthing a darkness none of them could escape. And then that moment came, the kind that shifts everything. Peter screamed, more panic rising above the noisy world, echoing a warning she could barely comprehend. "Mom, look out!" Marina turned, but the ground beneath her trembled again, and before she could grasp what was happening, an overwhelming darkness swallowed her whole, leaving behind the echo of one question: could they ever trust anyone again? Marina stood frozen, her heart channeling fear like a thunderbolt. The suited man's words echoed around her, every syllable a heavy weight pressing against her chest, stealing her breath. The crowd had dissolved into chaos, a sea of faces twisted in terror. But her focus was locked on him, the storm that had erupted in her world. And then, like a flash of lightning, Peter's hand slipped from hers. No! Panic shot through her. "Peter!" she screamed, voice breaking, desperation clawing at her throat. But the shadow behind them shifted. Suddenly, Leonard lunged forward, panic flickering in his eyes. "Get away from my family!" he shouted, the underlying layers of betrayal crackling in the air. The suited man barely flinched, an emotionless mask against the storm. "You were always weak, Leonard. Too spiritual for the real world." Marina felt the weight of his words pierce through the chaos. Weakness? What did he mean? Leo had struggled, yes, fighting an unseen battle. But this was something bigger, darker. Suddenly, the gravity of the situation seemed to pull tighter around them. "Don't!" Leonard shouted, his voice rising in both fear and anger. "You don't know what you've done!" Before anyone could react, a soft whir thudded into the air. With a sinking feeling, Marina glanced around, noticing strange glimmers of light dancing through the smoke. And then the world exploded again, a series of rapid cracks like lightning striking the ground. "Get down!" someone yelled. Marina threw herself against the ground, shielding Pierre, who had returned to her side only a heartbeat before. Everything blurred. When the dust settled, confusion hung thick over the crowd. Bodies lay scattered, some groaning, some motionless. She blinked hard, trying to parse what happened. Then it hit her. Edward was gone. Panic surged again. "Edward!" she cried, but her voice was swallowed. He'd been her lifeline in this storm. Now it felt as if the ground had opened up and swallowed him whole. The suited man stood tall, unbroken, his cruel smile revealing something sinister, something premeditated. He raised a finger, pointing straight at her. "Do you see now?" he hissed, voice smooth like velvet, but tinged with malice. "You're all pieces of a game you don't understand." And then, in a heartbeat, he seemed to disintegrate into mist, vanishing as chaos reigned. The world pulled back, swaying, as if time itself had taken a breath. "Marina!" Leonard yelled again, but now his voice was different, frantic. "The truth is, you need to remember who you are, who we are." "What?" she gasped, confusion racking her system. "Mom, please." Peter pulled on her sleeve, terror lighting his eyes as he squinted into the shadows. "What is he talking about?" The world around them felt like shards of glass, sharp, unsure, and deeply painful. She wanted to shield Peter from it all, yet she grasped at threads of clarity amidst the fog. Leonard's words danced in her mind, twirling with unwelcome memories. "Marina," he pressed, desperate. "You don't even know." Suddenly there was a rumbling sound, deep and omnipresent. The ground felt unsteady. People were scrambling, but her heart anchored to the startling change in Leonard's tone. And then she saw it. The suited man emerged from the smoke again, but he was no longer alone. Figures cloaked in shadows flanked him, each wearing the same cold, detached expressions. These weren't enemies, they were family. "Welcome home," the suited man said, the edge of his grin sharp enough to cut through the chaos. "Let's finish this." Marina's heart pounded. The revelation hit harder than any blow. Everything she thought she knew rattled underfoot. Who were they? The truth stretched like a shadow across her heart, threatening to expose secrets buried deep. Just as fear gripped her once more, something else pulsed within her. A whisper from the past begged to be heard. But before she could wrestle with it, the figure stepped forward. "It's time to choose a side, Marina," they chorused, voices blending into a chilling melody. The air thickened, wrapping around her like a veil. Could she trust Leonard? Could she trust anyone? The ground shook again, a heartbeat away from chaos. And in that moment, the world shattered and reformed. There, in the dome of flickering shadows, a hidden truth hovered, waiting to be unspooled. "What?" she breathed, eyes wide. "What are you hiding from me?" And all at once, her world spiraled away, leaving only shadows and questions behind. What lay ahead was an abyss of lost memories, and the line dividing loyalty began to blur. In a single breath, everything changed. Marina stood there, her heart racing in a storm of emotions. The suited man's face twisted into a mocking smile, and she felt the suffocating weight of those words. "You've awakened something terrible." The air was thick with dread, like a dark fog closing in. "Why are you doing this?" Marina croaked, her voice barely rising above the chaos around them. Peter squeezed her hand tighter, eyes wide with fear, reflecting a desperate hope that somehow this nightmare would end. "Because it's time to wake up," the man declared, his gaze cold and unyielding. "You never knew the truth. You were always meant to be part of something greater, and now you must make a choice." But that was when everything shifted again. A sharp sound, a gunshot, echoed through the air, snapping her head around. Time seemed to slow. A figure appeared from the smoke. Edward, finally back on his feet, and he was not alone. He was grappling with someone, struggling to pull a gun away from a shadowy figure. The crowd gasped collectively, a wave of panicked murmurs flooding the space. Marina felt every heartbeat thud against her chest, visceral and raw. "Edward, no!" she shouted, the fear in her voice slicing through the tension. But it was too late. The gun went off again, sending shock waves through the crowd. Then, everything erupted into chaos. Bodies scattered as people tried to escape the chaos. But all Marina could see was Edward's face, a mix of determination and sorrow, looking right at her. "Marina!" he yelled. "Get Peter out of here!" But then, shock coursed through her. The suited man, that figure of dread, slammed a fist into Edward's face, sending him sprawling to the ground. Time blinked, and suddenly, the throng around her shifted. What happened next changed everything. The suited man stepped closer to Edward, who struggled to rise again, but the man's foot pinned him down, ruthless and unyielding. It felt like everything froze, a harsh contrast to the surrounding chaos. "Did you really think you could save her?" the man sneered. "You don't even know what she is, what she holds." Marina froze, her throat tightening at his words. What he meant wasn't just a question about her identity. It felt monumental. Like the corner of a puzzle clicking into place. The fog shifted, revealing snippets of memories long buried, as if she had glimpsed something monumental, yet terrifying. She felt the ground beneath her shake, different from the chaos, something deeper winding itself around her. Then it happened. A blinding flash, the kind that sears into your memory. A loud crack reverberated in the air, accompanied by a moment of ethereal silence. Edward gasped, his eyes widening as something surely broke inside him. The suited man staggered back, his expression shifting from confidence to shock. And then she saw it, the hidden truth in Edward's gaze. He wasn't just struggling against an adversary. He was battling something else altogether. "Marina," he struggled, voice barely audible, "you need to remember who you really are." The implications of his words hung in the air like a dark cloud. The revelation struck her hard, raw and painful. Suddenly, the surrounded crowd melted away, the whispers drowned in her thoughts. Then, without warning, Leonard surged into view, adrenaline pumping through him. "They're coming," he shouted, but it felt like his fear resonated on a different level. The panic in his eyes mirrored what she felt deep within. "Get away from him!" Leonard shouted at the suited man, panic and fierce protectiveness melding into fury. But before Marina could process this new layer, Edward let out a breathy cry of pain, eyes widening with agony. "That's it," he yelled, desperation lacing every word. "You need to trust me, Marina." But in that moment, everything unraveled. The suited man's expression twisted, and in one swift motion, he pulled something from his coat, a small device that flickered ominously. The air thickened with tension, a tremor running through the ground. And as he pressed it, the space around them began to change, the veil of reality warping. "Say goodbye," he grinned, a sinister glee dancing in his eyes. Marina felt a rush of clarity sweep through her, the weight of revelations flooding her mind. "No, don't," she screamed. But before she could even react, a blinding light engulfed them. When it faded, everything was different. The crowd had vanished. The chaos dissolved. Then it was only them. Just Edward, Leonard, Peter, and the suited man. No hospital, no bustling city, just darkness swirling around them. "What did you do?" she gasped, confusion spiraling inside her. As the darkness shifted, she felt something awaken inside her, something powerful, yet deeply unsettling. The truth hung heavy in the air. Who was she really? What had she unknowingly awakened? And then, as reality trembled on the precipice, she realized she was not just a spectator in this nightmare. The darkness within her stirred, whispering familiar secrets. "Marina," Edward said, his voice trembling, "you're not just part of this. You are the key." And with that, the world spun again, leaving her in a void of uncertainty, a universe of questions demanding answers. What was she? What lay ahead? And could she ever trust anyone again? Marina stood there, heart racing, trapped in a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. Edward was right. She was more than she knew. But what did that mean? Questions swirled, each demanding answers that felt impossibly out of reach. Shadows danced in the corners of her mind, urging her to remember. Remember what? "Marina, focus!" Leonard's voice pulled her back, urgent and desperate. "You need to help us!" But then came a sound, a low rumble like thunder breaking. The walls of darkness flickered, and she held her breath. The suited man's expression faltered, just for a fraction of a second. A glimmer of fear flashed across his face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Get ready," he growled, his voice low but steeped in warning. "You don't understand what you've unleashed." Before she could process his words, the darkness split open. A blinding light surged forward, crackling with energy, like a long-held secret finally unleashed. "No!" Marina gasped as a surge of power radiated from her, wrapping around her in a fierce embrace. It felt both terrifying and exhilarating. She gasped again, feeling her heart race, not just with fear, but with awakening. Something was stirring deep within her. The moment slammed down, like a hammer striking an anvil. Shadows began to sway, flicking back and forth, as if waiting on a prompting. "What's happening?" Peter whispered, his small voice wrapping around her like a thin thread of hope in the gathering storm. A split second later, something erupted from the heart of that light. Something vast and wild, a figure materialized. Tall, luminous, yet strangely familiar. It had the essence of Edward, but it wasn't him. Marina's breath caught again. The entity loomed larger, radiating warmth and power, eclipsing the fear that enveloped the room. "That's not possible," she whispered, eyes wide, heart thudding painfully against her ribs. "Do you see?" It echoed, a voice like Edward's, but layered with a depth that made the air hum. "You are part of this." The crowd, the dazed faces that had once been a chaotic throng, were gone. Something inside her twisted painfully, like shackles falling away. But just as quickly as the light surged in, the memory of chaos snapped back. Leonard fought against the pull, panic straining his features. "What are you doing? Don't you see what this could bring?" His fear felt palpable, weaving through the air like a net. The being extended a hand to Marina, filled with warmth and light. "Unlock your gift. "Mom?" Peter cried, voice trembling. She felt his fear like an icy hand gripping her heart. "What's happening?" Before she could answer, a scream shattered the air. "Get back!" The suited man lunged toward the being. But in that single push, everything shifted again. With a roar, the figure cloaked in light burst forth. It intertwined with the suited man, energy crackling between them. "You shouldn't have awakened me," the suited man hissed, his voice curling around her like smoke. And then everything imploded. A rush of colors, screams, and shadows melded into a swirling storm. Marina felt weightless, the fabric of reality tearing apart at the seams. She struggled to anchor herself. "Peter!" she yelled, reaching for him. "But, Mom!" he screamed again, but this time with a different edge, suddenly distant, fading as the chaos escalated. And then, silence fell, like a heavy blanket smothering the world. The figures around her melted into the void. Marina's breath echoed. "Peter?" She shifted, panic clawing at her throat. What had happened? Reality pushed and pulled, each heartbeat feeling like a countdown. Then, within that suffocating silence, she heard whispers. Faint, familiar tones curling around her. Names, secrets, her family's history rushing back, flooding her mind with memories she thought were long forgotten. "No, no," she muttered, glancing down at her hands. Light flickered around her like sparks. But before she could comprehend, the darkness surged back in. And right when it seemed everything would solidify into comprehension, the air thickened with shock. A voice whispered from the void, haunting and familiar. "You have no idea who you really are, Marina. You weren't just born into this, you were chosen." Her heart raced, pounding with the weight of those words. Suddenly, an image struck her like a lightning bolt. The memory of a woman, her face cloaked in shadow. "Mom?" she gasped, eyes widening in horror. Before she could grasp the implications, the darkness surged again, thick and heavy, rippling. The whispers turned from gentle to agonizing. "You must decide now who you'll follow." The shadows grew sharp, edges cutting into her thoughts. And just beyond the haze, through the fading light, stood Leonard. But there was something different about him now, something dark that was gathering behind his eyes. "You don't understand," he shouted. "You're a threat to everything." Marina's heart sank as realization washed over her like cold water. "Leonard doesn't want you to know the truth." The figure spoke softly, but the air crackled between them. "Because the truth could destroy him." Marina's mind spun, thoughts racing. What had her brother hidden from her? "Now choose," the voice from the shadows called again, pressing against her, urging her to action. With the ground shifting beneath her, the truth loomed, monstrous and entwined with the lies. Would she step into the light of her own power, or plunge back into the darkness? The choice hung in the air, and with it came the weight of secrets almost too heavy to bear. Marina's heart raced, pounding against the swell of chaos. She felt the weight of the shadows pressing in, the urgency thick in the air. Leonard's desperate plea hung between them, mixing with the glare of that blinding light. "Now choose," the echo commanded again, but her mind was a scramble of fear and confusion. The moment froze. Shadows fluttered, merging with the flickering light that danced in front of her. She had a choice to make, but as she fought to clear her thoughts, a sudden chill cut through the confusion. It wasn't just the fear of the suited man. It was something else, something darker. Marina turned, scanning the void for any sign of Peter. "Peter!" she screamed again, panic clawing at her throat. She felt the invisible thread connecting her to him fraying, unraveling between her fingers. And that's when it happened. With a violent shatter, the boundary of the darkness cracked open, spilling forth a flood of crimson light. It surged toward her like a wave. and from it emerged a figure, familiar yet twisted. "Mom?" The voice was achingly sweet, pulling at her heartstrings. "Mom, it's me." Marina's breath hitched. The figure stepped closer, the familiar face now obscured by shadows. As the light expanded, she could see it was Peter, but his eyes glimmered with something unsettling, something powerful. "Peter?" She stumbled back, confusion swirling with a deepening dread. The innocent boy she knew was gone, replaced by something transcendent, almost ethereal. "What happened to you?" The shadows seemed to flicker and pulse, almost alive as they wrapped around him. "I've been waiting, Mom, waiting for you to see." "No, this isn't my son!" Marina gasped, her heart breaking with the realization. It felt as if the ground had fallen from under her, swallowed by the dark matter of the unknown. But that wasn't the worst of it. As she stared, Peter's form shifted, unfurling into a darker, grander version of himself, cloaked in shadows that whispered secrets. "You're the key to our fate, Marina," he said, voice deepening, reverberating through her bones. "We can finally awaken." Marina felt her heart twist in her chest. The fear that had clawed at her was now mingling with confusion and trepidation. "What do you mean? You're just a boy." She shook her head, trying to fight off the creeping sense of dread. Then, the truth crashed in on her, breaking like glass. "You were never just a boy." Her voice trembled as the pieces began to fall into place, their sharp edges cutting through the fog of understanding. The suited man watched, a twisted smile on his lips. There it is, the truth unmasked. Marina felt a flood of emotions rushing through her. Betrayal, despair, anger. A fiery desperation to save the remnants of her son from whatever darkness had begun to consume him. "You've taken my son!" she screamed, pain pooling in her voice. But as she spoke, the figures around her flickered again. Edward, lying on the ground beneath the weight of darkness, stirred. "No, this isn't what you think." He struggled to rise, face pale, but the shadows held him down like a vice. "Edward, help!" she cried, desperation cracking her voice. But before he could respond, the twisted figure of Peter took a step toward her. "There's a war coming, Mom. You're either with me or with them," he declared. And in that moment, something deep inside Marina cracked wide open. "Peter," she trembled. And just then, without warning, everything exploded. A burst of energy erupted from the boy, an unseen force that swirled in the air, engulfing Leonard. His screams sliced through the chaos, raw and desperate, as the shadows wrapped around him, dragging him into the depths. "No, Leonard!" she cried. But it all happened so fast. The darkness consumed him, leaving only a gaping void, an absence where he once was. Marina staggered back, the whole world spinning. She felt the reality around her slip away, unraveling into chaos. "What have you done?" she gasped, her heart racing like a wild drum. Peter grinned, his features shifting into something unrecognizable, more sinister. "I freed him. Now it's your turn to make a choice." And in that moment, as the shadows clawed for her, her world shattered under the weight of revelation. This was not just a battle for her son, it was a war for their very lives, and the true nature of her family lay wrapped in the darkness that beckoned her. Would she fight for hope or succumb to the shadows? The question hung in the air, heavy and profound, leaving everything, the very fabric of her world, hanging by a thread. Marina froze, her breath hitching as Peter's eyes glimmered with an intensity she had never seen before. The shadows pulsated around him, thick and suffocating. It felt like a grip of ice closing around her heart, squeezing tighter with each passing second. "You're my son!" she shouted, desperate, a plea mixed with dread, but it seemed like he was slipping away from her grasp. "Mom, remember." His voice was rich and layered, unlike the soft, innocent tones she once knew. "You can awaken the truth, Embrace it. No, this isn't who you are. She pushed against the surge of power swirling around them, the air charged with electricity. But Peter's transformation was undeniable. There was something otherworldly in his eyes, something that felt foreign, alien. The warmth she had always cherished was overshadowed by a cold ambition. The suited man watched, intrigued, as the air grew thick with tension. He's right, Marina. You both have power. You just need to embrace what you truly are. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. The darkness vibrated, and in the chaos, a ringing sound pierced through, relentless and discordant, building into an unbearable crescendo. The shadows flickered, writhing like living entities, trying to escape the suddenly shifting atmosphere. And then, without warning, the sound exploded into silence. In that moment of hushed stillness, a figure emerged from the swirling shadows. A woman, tall and graceful, yet carrying a presence that shattered the silence like glass. Marina's breath caught in her throat. She recognized that face. It was a reflection of herself, but aged and wearied, with deep-set eyes that spoke of pain and hidden truths. "Mom?" she whispered, disbelief flooding her senses. The figure stepped closer, confidence radiating in every movement. "It's time to reveal everything." Everything erupted again. Peter turned to face the woman, shock etched across his features. The power around him flickered. I don't understand." "I've waited too long," she said, her voice echoing, transcending time. "Marina, you must understand. You have a legacy, an incredible power buried deep within." "What do you mean?" Marina felt reality unfurling like a road leading into darkness. "What are you saying about me?" The echoes of the past crashed against her, painful memories flooding her mind, flashes of power, fear, and shadowy figures tugging at her consciousness. "You are not just a mother," the apparition continued. "You are a bridge, a link to a lineage thought lost. You were chosen to protect what we created." Marina staggered back, her head spinning. "Chosen? For what? Who are you?" The woman smiled, a soft tenderness mixed with sadness. "I am your mother, and you must remember, we are not alone. You have siblings." The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift again, a great rumbling as though the whole world were awakening. Peter's grip faltered. Hesitation flickered across his face, and he looked to the woman as if seeking guidance. "Your siblings are in danger, Marina, and the darkness wants you, all of you," the woman warned, her expression turning grave. "Darkness?" Marina swallowed hard. "What darkness?" But before she could absorb the revelation, the suited man's laughter interrupted, hollow and mocking. "She is lying! It's a trap!" Everything shifted instantly. Whispers erupted from the shadows, voices blending, chanting, weaving lies into her mind. The fabric of her world unraveled again. Only now the connection to Peter seemed to slip through her fingers like sand. In a flash, a figure materialized behind the woman, another dark silhouette, this one larger, more foreboding. It stepped forward, eyes like flames blazing in the darkness. "You want the truth, Marina? You can't handle it." The shock sent ripples of fear coursing through her body, a lump choking her throat. Peter clung to her side, wide-eyed, as the figure raised a menacing hand. "You think you're special? You've all been players in a game far beyond your comprehension." And then the most devastating truth sliced through the air. A bright flash illuminating the place, revealing not just Peter, but dozens of shadowy figures standing behind him, all sharing the same eyes and fierce determination. They were all connected, bound by blood and secret. "Your family's been hidden, waiting to be awakened," the woman declared, voice steady. "But there are those who want to control us, to use that power against the world." Marina's heart sank. realizing the magnitude of her lineage. She was one of many, guardians of something immense. Doubts churned in her stomach, twisting like a knot. Everything she thought she knew, unraveled like threads from a tapestry. "What do you want from me?" With that, the shadows surged again, roiling as the suited figure sneered. "It's what you want from yourself that matters." The ground shook violently, and a storm of chaos erupted around her, obscuring the truth that unspooled before her. But the words echoed faintly, whispering of choices yet to be made. "Find them before it's too late." The woman's voice rang out, carrying a strange urgency as everything spiraled into darkness again, leaving Marina hanging in the air, heart racing, caught between revelations and shadows. What did it all mean? Would she find her siblings, or were they already lost? The question hung heavy, pressing down with a weight she never asked to bear. The echoes faded, but the journey ahead was just beginning. The air crackled with tension as the woman, Marina's mother, gripped her shoulder. "You have the power to change this," she urged, her voice filled with a fiery resolve. "You must embrace it." Marina felt the words wash over her, igniting something deep within. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if her mother's presence was a shield against the darkness. The suited man glared, his expression twisting into a snarl. "You think you can resist?" he barked, his voice laced with venom. Marina turned to Peter, straining to read the confusion in his eyes. He teetered between his childhood innocence and this darker version of himself, pulled by forces beyond their understanding. "Peter, please," she pleaded, stepping forward. "Fight it. Remember who you are." That moment hung in the air, heavy and charged. The swirling shadows stilled, almost listening. Peter's gaze flickered, something warm breaking through the storm in his eyes. "Mom, I don't know what's happening." Marina reached for him. "Together, we can end this, you and me." She felt a rush of warmth course through her veins, as if the trust between them could push back the darkness. Suddenly, the stranger lunged forward, but Marina held her ground. "No," she shouted, raising her hands defiantly. Light burst from her palms, lighting up the night, illuminating the figures swirling around them. The suit figure recoiled, shadows thrashing wildly. "You can't control it," he howled. But she didn't care. The truth empowered her. The shadows began to dissolve. The light was stronger than any darkness, and for the first time, she understood the legacy. The connection was her birthright, a force meant to protect. "Fight it, Peter," she cried again, light wrapping around her son as if it recognized him. He blinked and turned toward her, then back to the fading darkness. He stammered, his voice trembling. "I remember." Marina felt the world shift beneath her as Peter stepped forward, the glow pulsing around him. The balance began to flutter, and shadows grew fainter. "Together," he shouted, a fire igniting in his eyes. "Yes!" Her heart soared. "Together!" The darkness quivered, desperate to hold on, but the light surged stronger, swallowing the malevolence inch by inch. The suited figure stood there, fury etched across his features, and as the last remnants of darkness faded into the night, Marina felt a weight lifted. A sudden quiet enveloped them, a hush that felt purifying. "It's done," Peter exhaled, looking at her with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "We did it?" "Yes," she whispered, pulling him into a tight embrace. "We fought it." But then the silence shifted, shadowy figures lingering at the edges, still watching, waiting. She could feel the weight of their judgment, a reminder that the work was far from over. "Marina, this is only the beginning." Her mother's voice echoed gently. "There's more to uncover, more family to heal." Marina nodded, her heart a mix of fear and determination. They would find the rest, the siblings hidden in shadows. She wouldn't let history repeat itself. And as she and Peter stood together, They could feel the very essence of hope rising within them. Out of the chaos and darkness, something new was beginning to blossom. This was their new path, a chance not just to protect, but to reclaim their legacy. Something worth fighting for, together. And just as hope seemed within reach, she felt the shadows quiver one last time, a reminder that while they had triumphed today, the future remained uncertain. What lay ahead was still shrouded in mystery. "Don't lose sight of who you are," her mother whispered. "You have the strength of our blood. You will make it." Marina looked at Peter, determination etched in her heart. Their new journey started now. But just as the thoughts settled, her phone buzzed, pulling her back. The world outside awaited, full of unknowns yet to discover, trials still to face. "Let's go, Peter," she whispered, gripping his hand tightly. Together, they moved forward into the unknown. But before they vanished into the fog, an urgent thought emerged. "Quick! Don't miss the next chapter. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss any of the exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to boost the algorithm and share your love. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what happens next. And don't wait 1 second more to share this video with at least 5 friends who must know the shocking conclusion. True fans, this is your moment to show support.